What's going on, football fans? It's me, J.R. Clark, back again with another Pound for Pound ATL Live. Joined as always by my main man, Jonathan Holder. Jonathan, what's going on, brother?
Man, it's another beautiful day in the neighborhood, and just looking forward to. I can't wait for Thursday to get here, man.
Dude,
It
dude.
feels like it feels like yesterday today has been the longest days of my life.
Oh, man. And I think I have a fear that tomorrow is going to be even longer. And Thursday, oh, Lord. But
Yep.
nonetheless, we have made it in a sense. The draft week is upon us. Um, Today we got the draft press conference from Terry and Arthur, which we'll get into here in just a
Real
little
quick,
bit. Hmm,
real quick on
yeah,
that, I thought it was funny. I saw somebody on Twitter was like, "I didn't learn anything from that presser that I didn't already know before." I'm like, "Well, then he did his job."
right, right. There's part of me
He
that's
he
like,
even he he even made a comment on there. He's like, "Look, we make sure that somebody can't come and look at the transcript of this and know and figure out what we're going to do."
that's it. Yep, that's it. That's exactly it. Uh, Appreciate it there, King. Hold on, I got something for
Hey,
you. It's under brand. That's here it is, and bam, there it is.
yeah, there you go.
Um,
Appreciate it, King.
if you want to put a comment down there, King, something that you want to add to that, we'll definitely read it. But yeah, I mean, we're like I said, draft week is upon us, so uh, I guess without much further ado, we might as well just go ahead and get into it. It's always weird with that because, like, I have to think to myself, okay, how long, like, do you want the intro to go before you hit the little, intro music video type thing going on? Sometimes like there's 2 or 3 minutes worth of things to talk about. Sometimes there's only like 30 seconds worth before we really just need to go ahead and get into the topics that we have. And I think this week was one of those deals where there really wasn't like much preamble going on. It is an absolute beautiful weekend, but we're all here for one reason, and that's because it's the draft. Like the NFL
Yep.
draft is upon us this week. All the months of preparation, the many hours of film watching, the many hours of poring over what prospects we're going to pick and who's going to be there and how is it going to play out, all this stuff is fixing to come to of fruition. And like the smoke is really starting to build like big time and starting to boil for like a guy like Bijan Robinson to the Atlanta Falcons. And
Yep.
one thing I want to go ahead and like tell everybody, this is about the time last year that we really started hearing rumblings about Drake London.
Yep.
And, the year before that, when the rest of the mainstream media really started catching up to Kyle Pitts at 8 or at 4, rather, how that was a real possibility. Um, you know, Yesterday, Peter King and the Monday Morning QB put out his mock draft, and he had us taking Bijan Robinson at 8.
Yep.
And the past 2 years, he's nailed both Kyle Pitts and Drake London. So, I just want Falcons fans in a lot of ways to like mentally prepare to hear Bijan's name called at 8. I'm not saying that it's a deadlock, but it's definitely not as far fetched as we thought when the draft season kicked off. Like when the off season ended in January, had you told me that you know come into April you were going to be okay and actually kind of pumped about the Falcons taking a running back at 8, I would have laughed at you. You know,
Yeah.
but as the process has worn on, realizing that there aren't really a ton of first round talents in this particular draft. There's a lot of guys that you can build for your team,
Yeah.
but there's going to be a lot of guys taken in the first round that in years prior or even years coming up, may not have been a first rounder.
Well, and there's going to be guys that are taken in the first round that when they redraft, they'll probably be like, this guy probably could have been a second, third rounder. And then there's going to be guys that are second, third rounders that, a few years down the road, people are going to be like, this guy went in the 3rd round. This guy went in the 4th round. Well,
Right.
like Grady Jarrett. Like if you were to redraft Grady Jarrett based on the production that he's had in his career to this point, and so you would know exactly what you're going to get. There's no way he makes it to the 5th round.
Right.
Absolutely no way.
Well,
And
guys,
so
guys like Grady Jarrett make it possible for guys like 8080 out of Northwestern to be talked about in the 2nd round, because now
yep.
you have a guy who is more of a smaller stature as far as D tackles go, that you can point at and say, see, look, this guy was successful. Just like Drew Brees can be the reason why Bryce Young is possibly taken at number 1 by the Panthers. Because you can look at a guy like Drew Brees, or you can look at a guy like Russell Wilson and say, see, it worked out for them, so, it makes it easier to swallow, those deals. King put up there, he says, let's go, fellas. Much love, man. Much love to you too, man.
Much love to you, man. Much love to the entire Pound for Pound family, man.
Exactly. I was say I hadn't seen D Sloan in here in a while, so I wanted to read this. I'm so glad you're in here tonight. So what's going on, P4P? I know you guys will be live for draft night, but I'll have you guys back on the replay at work. You guys keep putting out great content. He thinks it's going to be Christian Gonzalez at 8. There's a real good possibility that it could be Christian Gonzalez. It could be Devon Witherspoon. If Tyree Wilson, for some odd reason, is there sitting there at 8, I think that could very well be the pick. If he's sitting there at 8,
Yeah.
but
I think the 3 guys that if they make it to 8, that there's not going to be a trade back. There's not going to be any fooling around. It's going to be other than if we take the comment at the presser today where he's like, why, even if you're going to make the pick, why does it take so long? And Terry was like, it's airtime.
That's right.
It's time that the national media is talking about your team.
Yep.
And especially in the 1st round, especially in the top 10, because they're going to make that pick at number 1. Then they're going to spend however many minutes doing that, but then there's going to be a good chunk of time that they're going to spend talking about your team, and then even after you pick, they're going to talk a little bit more as they analyze the pick you just made. So that's for some more, but I think the 3 guys are going to be Tyree Wilson, Jalen Carter, and if he somehow does, Will Anderson. Those are really the only 3 guys I can think of that they would not at least entertain a trade back scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I think they would just they would, whatever they decide that they're going to go to the podium and they're going to make that pick. Past that, even Bijan Robinson, the only thing I could think of, if they love Bijan and they really want him, but they would like to trade back, because that's what Peter King was talking about.
Right. Mm-hmm.
If that's the case, the only worry you have is, okay, we could trade back. Maybe we could, especially if somebody like a Stroud falls, which I don't think that's still going to happen. But let's just say the weirdness of weirdness happens and CJ Stroud falls to 8. But the other 3 guys we talked about are gone. Then you definitely entertain Tennessee, 11, 12, maybe even 13 or 14, trade back to if somebody wants to come up and get Stroud.
Right.
But the only worry there is a lot of people are like, the Eagles love Bijan Robinson.
I was listening to a podcast today with the Athletics podcast. They had Dan Bugler on. So it was Nate Tice.
Yep.
Robert,
I haven't listened to it yet, but I know which one you're talking about.
And it was really good, and I really enjoyed it. And I've kind of steered away from listening to some of those up to this point because I wanted to make sure that my opinion was my own. Like I've said that before on here, but as we're getting closer, I feel like I've formulated everything I'm going to formulate. So I'm kind of now trying to hear what other people have to say to see how far off base I am on prospects one way or the other. But Dan said something very interesting, and it wasn't Dan. It was Robert Mays. He said that in the 14 years that Howie Roseman has been the GM, they have only drafted 4 positions in the 1st round. Only 4. O lineman, D lineman, QB, and wide receiver. That's it. In 14 years, those are the only positions. And it's been 20 plus years since they've drafted a running back in the first round at all. So it would be interesting to see because there are a ton of reports that, say that, uh, Bijan may not make it past Philly. So
Yeah.
if that is the case, then that would be a big, like, tendency breaker for Philadelphia. So it'd be interesting to see how that, obviously ends up playing out. If the
Yeah.
Falcons elect to drop back, thinking that maybe they can get, I think if they drop back, I think the two targets then would be, um, Bijan or Nolan Smith. In my opinion, I've said
I
for a
would add.
while now. Go
I
ahead.
would just add one name to that. I think both those guys are absolutely targets if they fall into the 11, 12, 13, 14 range. Uh, it would be Bijan, Nolan Smith, and potentially Skaronski. Like
Right.
those are the three names that I would say they don't want to they don't want to drop too far back unless somebody wants to give them a crazy, crazy good deal. I don't think they would want to trade back past 15. Um, because that's the number that I keep hearing, by the way. Now, and somebody actually asked him this in the presser, like, how many first round talents do you feel like there
Oh
are?
yeah. Yeah.
They're like, I don't want to give that because then somebody's like, well, then they won't trade back any farther than that.
Right.
But I think that the number I keep hearing is they believe right now there are 15 first round talent caliber players in this draft.
Hmm.
So I don't think if that's true, I don't think they want to go past 15 or whatever their number is.
Well, unless like the Bradley agrees with the hope they draft Skaronski. But uh I think what you like, unless your strategy is okay, we're going to give Desmond a year, full NFL offseason. We're going to try to give him the best possible talent around him and see what he can do. But if I want to hedge my bet, if somebody offers me a 2024 first round pick or enough ammo to where I think I can move up in 2024,
Mhm.
just in case, because like you got to figure you're coming into what is on paper uh is an easier schedule. Like we're supposedly on paper having like the second easiest schedule next year.
Right.
So if you have won 7 games 2 years in a row with a worse roster and a tougher schedule, now you arguably have a better roster and an easier schedule. Even if Ritter isn't the guy, you can like realistically say we're probably going to be drafting in the middle of the pack next year. So if you really feel like uh Ritter, like by the end of the season, you're like, oh wow, that was a mistake. Then you're going to have to move up further, right?
Yeah.
Now I agree with Nick. He says no such thing as an easy or hard schedule. I completely agree, but this will be the talking point, right? This will
Yes.
be what will be talked about over the summer. So I mean, but don't get me wrong, I agree with you, Nick. Like
The
never
nature of the NFL
right.
makes it so that a team that was any of the top 5 teams coming out of coming into this coming season, they're going to be looked at as bad teams no matter what they do.
Mhm.
And so at the beginning of the season, that's going to be like, oh, having that team on your schedule makes it an easier schedule. But then halfway through the season, you might be like, oh man, this is a powerhouse team this year.
Right.
And so you just never
Exactly. So like I'm not trying to like push that narrative, but
know.
that is a thought process is that there is a real good chance that you're going to be, especially with you know the Panthers hit the reset button. Derek Carr's coming into a new situation in New Orleans, and you have a year of like you finally have the reset button being hit basically down in Tampa. So, just in your division alone, you could find yourself in the playoffs. And if you're in the playoffs, then you're picking, towards the end of the first round. Okay.
Yep.
So, anyway, so with that being said, if the trade back is because Eric Mack is over here said it would be smart to trade back. Yes, it would be, but remind yourselves that we have to have somebody to trade back with, and they have to have somebody to want to come up for. So what you got to hope for is either one of the quarterbacks is sitting there at 8, or somebody like a uh, now Jets sitting at 15 may want to come up to get O line help.
Yep.
And then that could, in a sense, like Chris is saying here, you mean the Jets number 15 in a Corey Davis trade. So, like, you could potentially package like swapping picks and getting Corey Davis,
Yep.
kind of deal for the Jets to move up. But back to
Now, if we were given that option with like swap first, Corey Davis, and a third this year,
or even a
I
fifth or
could.
sixth, because you're not right now, you got a big gap between fourth and seventh with nothing going
That's
on.
true. That's true. Yeah. So
So,
like a swap first, Corey Davis, and a fifth. I would probably to get to drop to 15, because if I drop to 15, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to either pick up Bijan, Nolan Smith, or Skoronski. And
right.
if those guys are gone,
Then,
there's probably still going to be potentially a Paris Johnson, though I think he'll probably go earlier. Um, Paris Johnson, there's Roger Jones. There's different guys you can
yeah,
plug
there's
in there
different
if you
guys you
want to
could
go
put
O
in.
line. And then
Uh,
you talk about being in the realm of the Van Nesses of the
right,
world and those
exactly.
guys. So.
Out of your Falcon mind, our friends there says, my guess is they have one or two guys that I'll absolutely take at 8, but if they're gone, they'll look to go back. I think
Yeah.
that's, yeah, and what Terry was talking about today is that they don't necessarily have a big board in the way that the media has a big board, or the way that like these websites have big boards. They have more like clusters of guys that they feel comfortable with taking at this number, and those, that cluster could be a cornerback, a defensive end, a running back, and an O lineman could be their tier 1 cluster, and then they could go down from there with a great mix of what great mix of positions and things of that nature. um Dre says, heck no to the no, don't trade up and lose picks, stay at 8 or move back.
I mean, it all depends, man. Like I said,
Yeah.
if the I don't think they're going to trade up. I don't think they're going to. Okay, because I do think that worst case scenario they'll stick where they're at. They'll make a pick at 8, move on. Okay. However, I do think the trade back is much more because of exactly what you talked about earlier. Is potentially more, to try to pick up another second, another third, another fourth, maybe a fifth or a sixth, try to pick up some extra ones for this year or stockpile next year to, like you said, as a backup plan in case Ritter doesn't work out, which I hope he does. And I think he will. But
Mm-hmm.
if he doesn't, that's your fallback plan of being, which screams this front office already, because everything they've done to this point, even with free agent, yeah, they went out and spent a bunch of money, but they didn't go out and spend a bunch of money like overspending everywhere. Did they
Mm-hmm.
maybe overspend in a couple spots? Maybe. Okay. But not egregiously so. And
Right.
they're not doing it in a way that can completely hamper them for years to come if it doesn't work out. Right.
Yeah, they have like escape hatches on pretty much everything that they sign, maybe outside of Jesse Bates, maybe, but
Yep.
that's the one you feel like is going to work out.
Yep.
So for the most part, you're right. Everything that they've done up to this point, they've done with you know uh looking forward in mind. And even when, like Terry was talking about today with the concept of BPA, BPA said, he said it's not just for this season, and we're looking at it for years to come. Um,
Yep.
so, basically saying that their BPA may be a lot different than our BPA, depending on like how they're trying to structure, the build of this team.
Yep.
One of the comments that Arthur Smith made that I found to be very interesting is like, he made a comment that he wanted it to be hard to make this 53 man roster. And I thought that that was a great, like, I know it's coach speak, but I don't think I've heard that kind of statement out of a coach from the Falcons since I've been paying attention. I know it's always been like, oh, well, we want competition at every position, but that always feels hollow, you know.
Yeah.
But hearing Arthur say, I want it to be hard to make this 53, I thought really spoke to, what they're attempting to do here. Did you feel the same way on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you like making the team, just making the team should be an accomplishment. Like we should make the goal is to make sure that we get the best, what is it, 53, 54?
Well,
I
it's
can't remember.
53. It's the 53 man
Yeah,
roster, and then the 45 are active on game day.
there you go. So it should be just to make the 53 man roster should be hard as hell. You
Yeah.
want and you want it to be hard as hell because then, assuming you make the right choices, and then you never know if they're right or not until later, but you try to make the best choices you can to have the best team as possible. And if it's hard, if there's are guys that you would love to keep on your team, but you just can't because these other guys you love even more. In years past, those guys that we would love to keep on our team, we generally did, and the guys we got rid of in a lot of cases didn't go anywhere and do anything. Every now and then they would, but 9 times out of 10, guys that were getting cut, on at the cut downs, we'd maybe see them show up in other places, but they were never like, oh man, that dude balled out when he went somewhere else. We don't see that a lot from the Falcons, but you see it a lot from other teams,
Hmm.
and I would love to see that happen with the Falcons, where we see guys that get cut from us, immediately get picked up, or they get picked up by other teams and they go on and have good careers, because that shows that they were good enough to make the team. It was just a numbers game that got them out of here because they did just no space for it.
I mean, how many times have we said, the guys that are starting for us wouldn't even be backups on somebody else's roster?
Yeah.
I wanted to be the other way around.
Yes.
I wanted to be like, the guys that other teams are cutting couldn't beat out our backups, because that's how you have the depth to, withstand injuries and to make the long haul. I mean, yes, Philadelphia lost in the Super Bowl, but what made that team deadly this past year was that defense that they could just continue to send at you in waves. That defensive line. Same thing with, Washington's defensive line. They
Well, this is the pros, so it is a little bit different. But I remember there was a guy I worked with, uh, and he played for, I think it was like Eastern Carolina.
Mhm.
You know, uh, Division 2 school or something like that. And but like just like all the other Division 2 schools, what are they called? CFB now,
Yeah, something like
schools.
that.
But they would play like the big boys, Florida States and what have you, mainly just to get a paycheck.
Right.
They weren't expected to win. Every now and then some Cinderella team wins, but he would go up against them, and it was like when we played a Florida State, it was never that our frontline guys and their frontline guys, it wasn't, we weren't getting our butts kicked royally most of the time in that situation. Where we ran into problems was their defensive line, like their frontline guys would come in, they were good. Then they would go off for a breather and bring in the backups. They were just as good. Then
Right.
you'd bring in their backups, and they were just as good.
Yep.
Like they were like two or three lines deep. Whereas on their side, when their defense is going against their offense, their frontline defensive guys, most times were still not good enough to hang with that offense, but they were good, and it wouldn't get out of hand early. Where it gets out of hand is when you have to get later in that game, and they don't have the depth. That second line that comes in not as good. And that's where you
Mhm.
start to lose
That's where
control
you
of the
start.
game.
Yep. Yep.
And in the NFL, it's the same way. We just don't see it to the extent that it doesn't get out of hand like it does in the college game like that. But you can definitely tell when last year, whenever you didn't have Grady in, you didn't have Taquan in, you
Oh
didn't
yeah,
have those guys, and you got like the Timmy Horns of the world, which those guys are good for rotational purposes. They're not good starters. And but when they were in there for like whole series at a time, that was when you were seeing the big chunks. That's when you were seeing the offense really get into a rhythm, and it just got out of hand for us. And that's the problem that we ran into.
Willie, we appreciate you, good sir.
Yes, we do.
There we go. All right. Anyway, tipped us $2, which we appreciate greatly. He says,
Thank you,
"Do
Willie
you
Doc.
think Arthur Smith or Terry Fontenot gave clues to what we do at 8?" No, not really. I
No,
mean, they even, in a lot of ways, they kind of like walked back a little bit of the like Desmond Ritter naming starter type talk. Like Fontenot. Yeah.
I didn't get that.
Well, I mean, they were still talking about like, oh, we could do anything. They were still. It was very much like, we could go any route we want. You know, to add it at every position. It was very much like felt
well,
like they were kind of stepping back a
I,
little bit.
I think they were being realistic in that because it came up as a question from a reporter about like you know you talked about you wanted this you didn't want to coronate somebody and this and that and the other, but then your backup your Taylor Heineke, he comes in and he immediately talks about I was told I was coming to be the backup for Ritter,
Right.
you know, and their response to that was, look, when we sat down with the agent for this guy, we sat down with the player. We said this is our vision, and we didn't want to BS him. Essentially, we didn't want to lie
Right.
to him. We were very upfront. Like you are coming in to be the backup for Ritter. Ritter is a starter, okay, and so he knew that coming in. Now, does that mean that through training camp, yeah, Ritter is the named starter right now, but if he comes into training camp and Ritter just absolutely stinks it up throughout training camp, throughout the preseason, and Heineke, when he comes in, moves the offense. He does what he's supposed to do. If that happens, could he eventually be named starter? Absolutely, he could,
Mm-hmm.
because he looks like he's the guy that gives the team a better chance to win, right? And that can happen no matter what you want to happen, that can happen. So like I think that's what they were trying to get to. I see where somebody could hear that and be like, well, they're walking back but I don't I think that was just literally like he's our starter. We told him he's coming in as backup, but you never know. Injury could happen. Literally Ritter could throw a pick every time he drops back and throws the ball. Like that kind of thing could happen. Like he looked completely lost out there for some reason.
Right.
And you're not going to go into the year as with a starter that throughout the entire preseason threw like 3 or 4 picks every game.
Yeah.
You're just not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's what I think could change. But I think in their minds, if things work out the way they foresee it, Ritter is the starter. He is the starter now. He could probably have a little bit of bad days here and there, but he's going to be the starter no matter what.
Right. Nick asks a real good question here. He says, "Who will be Ritter's safety blanket?" I really think that could turn into Janu Smith. I think Janu Smith could be the outlet, or could be the safety blanket. If you do take Bijan at 8, I can easily see, Bijan being them making him like the outlet, as in a way to get him involved in the offense, especially if you're gonna because there's no reason not to continue running Algier as well.
Yep.
So if you roll out there with a, you know, 22-man personnel with 2 backs in the backfield, and you leave, Algier in as a personal protector and run, but Bijan out on a route, like Bijan could be, the safety blanket in that aspect. But I think, initially it would probably be uh like somebody like a Janu Smith. Makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, because I think that Janu Smith, the best thing about him, or the best thing he's going to have, is he's got Kyle Pitts, and so
and Drake
the
London.
guys.
So
Well, Kyle Pitts but I'm more thinking about from a tight end perspective. Even if they're both in line and they both go out for routes, right?
mm-hmm.
Uh, you can't. They're not going to have enough DBs to go around to put a DB on Pitts and Janu.
Oh yeah,
Because you're gonna have Drake London on one side. You're probably gonna have Mac or Scotty Miller or somebody else on the other side. So those guys are gonna get DBs. You're probably gonna put either a DB or a bigger safety, uh, on Pitts, because you put it just about any linebacker is a mismatch
oh
for
big
us,
time.
in our favor with Pitts. So you're probably going to put a DB or somebody like that on him. Janu Smith, if there's anybody that's going to get the linebacker or even a bigger box safety who doesn't move as well in coverage, he's going to be the guy that gets it. And so yeah, I absolutely could see Janu Smith being that safety blanket for Ritter. Absolutely.
Tony's got a good statement here that I want to clear up. He says, I don't know why you keep saying if Desmond Ritter doesn't do well, if Ritter isn't the guy. It sounds like you have doubts, as you said on other shows. As you have said this on other shows, also Ritter will do fine. Okay, hear me out here. From word go, I have thought that, especially out of last year, the quarterback draft class, that Ritter fit Arthur Smith better than anybody else. I have said I am not ready to just anoint him the face of the franchise. I think it is smart and it is a great deal that they are going to give Ritter, or they by all signs are going to give Ritter 23 to prove that he can be the guy. And I've also stated many times over that if Ritter ends up being the guy, that it is a boon for us.
Yes.
That we were able to get him in the third round and that he ends up being the guy, right? Now, I just need to see a little bit more of it before I'm ready to anoint him myself. I think he has a lot of great things going for him, a lot of things that you can be, excited about. I think he's got a much stronger arm than we thought coming out of college. His processing seems to be on par with everybody else. He's got good athleticism and mobility. My biggest concern is his accuracy. Through 4 games,
Yeah.
he had just over 60%. I think it was like 63%. I would much rather that be over 65, like closer to 70. It took him 4 games to finally throw a touchdown. Now, you can give me a million different reasons why that happened, whatever. I'm just giving you the things that I look at and go, okay, that's a little worrisome, right? But you add that up with the fact that in 4 games as a rookie, 2 on the road, he didn't throw any interceptions. That's great. That's absolutely great.
And he to talk to the 63% completion rate. He had a 63% completion rate, but he also had a 75% on target rate,
right,
as well. So his receivers that he was tossing to didn't always do him a lot of favors. So there was stuff left out on the field. Now you're going to have drops. It's going to happen, but if you're on target 75% of the time, you should probably be able to have a completion percentage in the somewhere between 65 and 70%.
That's
if guys aren't dropping balls.
Ideally, that's what I'm looking for, is 65 to 70. Tony, to answer your question here, if CJ Stroud falls, 7 spots to us, do we listen to phone calls and trades down? Yes, sir. How far am I willing to trade back? If somebody can tell me where the Vikings are trading, are they in the 20s? I think they're 23.
Probably.
I wouldn't if I were to go back to the Viking spot, which is about as far as I think you would be going back, in my opinion.
23.
Okay. So if then you're getting first round picks for next year, you're getting multiple picks for this year and next year. You're getting a major haul
Yeah.
to go back that far. And that alone, to me, would be worth it. You could drop back. And then if you wanted to take some of the picks that you collected from the Vikings and move back up in the first round to get the guy you want, or sit there at 23 and take, Brian Breesy or Miles Murphy or Van Ness if he's there, or if you like, say you have almost a similar grade to Bijan Robinson to Jahmyr Gibbs, you could take Jahmyr Gibbs at 23
Yep. Or
and
a guy
feel good about
like
that.
or a guy like Cansey. I know he
Yeah.
started to
He's starting to like
go up.
tumble down a little. Yeah, right. So, like, that's as far. Yeah, yeah. No, Dr. Ganja's got a real good point here.
Yeah,
Brian
Brian
Branch
Branch.
at
Yeah.
23. Like, that would be like a good pick as well. So, 23 is about as far back as I would be willing to go, because I still think that puts you in a spot to, get a good player, whether it's a offensive lineman, whether it's a, for what odd reason, say JSN is sitting there at 23. Like, you could feel a little bit better about taking JSN
Or
there.
or Jordan Addison or
Yeah,
Zay
or Zay
Flowers.
Flowers. Like, if you wanted that wide, you wanted to secure your wide receiver too, which there's been reports coming out that they're targeting like day 2 for like wide receiver and safety help. Like, you'd go back to 23 with the Vikings, and now you can feel better about grabbing one of those players and securing that 5th-year option. So, but I can understand, Dre Murphy's points. Is me personally, I wouldn't go any further than 17 or 19. Yeah, like, I'm just telling you, in my mind, I'm thinking about if a CJ Stroud or an Anthony Richardson or a Will Levis is sitting there at 8, who would be willing to come up for them?
Yeah.
Like, to me, who has, in the later part of the draft, who has a more glaring need? Is it the Vikings? Like, what do they do with Kirk Cousins past this year? Is it Tennessee? Like, what do they do with Tannehill? There's reports that they have given up on Malik Willis already, that they've
Yep.
lost faith in him. Like, so is it Tennessee? Is it uh, Washington? Like, they say they're going to roll with uh, Sam Howell, in 23. But, do they, have they fallen in love with somebody like a Anthony Richardson, being that he's most closely compared to Cam Newton, who Ron Rivera coached? So, can he easily see himself coaching another player, such as like that? So that's where
The
my head
the
would be at.
the bet, like, for the trade back crowd, you want either uh, Anthony Richardson or CJ Stroud. If either one of those guys somehow fall to you at 8, that is the perfect situation, because then you're probably on the phone with like 2 or 3 teams,
Right.
and everybody's trying to figure out what's the best deal we can get out of this, as long as you're not a divisional foe, right? We're not going to do it with the Saints. We're not going to do it with the Buccaneers.
No.
I mean, maybe we will, but I would be really surprised if we did. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can see that happening. Absolutely. And that's the best case scenario for the trade back crowd.
Real quick, David Persons. I've seen this a lot, so I'm highlighting you in a sense.
Yeah.
I'm not picking. I hope you don't think I'm picking, but I want to know what you see as holes after what we have done here, like in the off season. Bringing in Calais Campbell, bringing in David Onyemata, bringing in Caden Ellis, considering the guys that we drafted last year, Arnold Ebiketie, D'Angelo Malone. You brought in Jeff Okuda, Mike Hughes,
Bud
like
Dupree.
Bud Dupree, right? You brought in, like, to me, like, the biggest hole is the only place that we haven't addressed is left guard
Yeah.
and running back. So
I could see if somebody said left guard, like offensive line, running back, and maybe wide receiver.
right.
Like I could see those three spots being like the holes, right?
Well, I mean,
That
if you
that you would
consider
like
that,
to,
because
yeah,
I mean, you've brought in Mac Hollins and you brought in Scotty Miller. Those are arguable upgrades to, Cordell Hodge, who you brought back, but Demir Bird, uh, Olamide Zacchaeus. I know somebody in the chat was mentioning our secret weapon of Jared Bernhardt. Like, but for the most part, like, that I'm just trying, like I said, I am not picking by any stretch of the imagination. But I think we have felt for so many years that we've had so many holes that I'm almost wondering if it has become a default of the Atlanta fan base to just assume we have a ton of holes.
yep.
Um,
Because we had a losing record last year,
right.
the assumption is, even with all the moves and free agents, like, oh, we got so many holes to fill. And I'm not saying we can't add to the things that we've already done, because again, we've heard the GM Fontenot say, like, we want to be in a position to take best player available, even if it adds to strengths,
Yeah,
right? So
exactly.
if we add another D line guy, great. You can never have enough pass rush, whether that's
Right.
interior, edge, doesn't matter. If
Yeah.
we add to the offensive line, I have said this for years, even before this podcast ever existed. I have talked to JR 4 years. If I was a GM starting out, and I'll say this, Howie Roseman, that is evidenced obviously by how well Philadelphia, if not every year, it seems like they're in contention most years. They have some down years every now and then, but
Mhm.
most years they're in contention. They just were in a Super Bowl last year. They just won one a few years ago.
Right.
They're always in the picture. They're always competing for playoffs. They're always getting to the playoffs, what have you. And the reason why is he only ever takes offensive line and defensive line in the first round, and then a wide receiver or QB, right? Because
Right.
those are the
It's
places you want to
Yep.
take those things. But you build those trenches out,
Mhm.
right? Build the trenches out. Make your offensive line as good as you can make it. Make that defensive line as good as you can make it. And if you're good there, you can be somewhat subpar in the other areas, and by and large, that defensive line is going to take and be a force multiplier for everything else.
Right.
And so that's the reason why when somebody says we better not take Skoronsky at 8 or 10 or 12 or whatever, and it's like, if
Shoot, take him.
Skoronsky is what we think he is, essentially another Lindstrom that you plug in at left guard, and he starts day one, and he's potential, Pro Bowler, All Pro, within a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. If he's that guy,
Then shoot.
then man, you
Done.
make
Ain't
this
nobody
all.
gonna be mad.
No, because now you have Algier. Maybe you try to trade back in and get Jameer Gibbs, or you take Chardonnay later
Yeah.
on, or
Right.
you take
Chardonnay in the
whoever.
second or whoever.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter.
whoever, you take those guys, and now pretty much you're the Denver Broncos at that point. You're from years ago, where it's like it didn't matter who you undrafted free agent. It's now the best running back in the league because
Yeah.
you had the offensive line to make it happen.
Right. His
So
answer, which I agree with, he says, parts of the O line, D line, and QB is still questionable. Ritter, the franchise. I'm like I said earlier, I'm not labeling Ritter the franchise, but I'll say this: Ritter, 1 year into the system, is going to probably give you better production than any rookie. We're talking about just 23.
yep.
And then if Ritter ain't the guy in 23, then you do what you got to do to go get, Caleb Williams or May. I'm blanking on the
Drake May.
Drake May. I want to say
Yeah.
Dave May, and I'm like, it's definitely not Dave May. Drake May up there in UNC, right? So, but I agree. Like if it would come down to, Bijan at 8, or I knew for a fact that Skoronsky was going to be, a another Chris Lindstrom, then I'd be fine either you toss, flip a coin and we'll go. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Chris says here, says, if Calais Campbell thinks we can win 13 games, who are we to argue? And that man knows and seen a lot more football than I have.
Yes.
So, why won't that? There it is. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, it is definitely like wide open at 8. There isn't like outside of a punter at 8. I don't or Will Levis. I'll go ahead and say it. Even though that podcast that I was listening to today put Will Levis in a light that I hadn't necessarily thought about, and I'll give Nate Tice credit for this. Like I'll full on say this was his thought, not mine. Like talking about what teams like about Levis is the fact that he has went through a bunch of different offensive coordinators, played with not the greatest talent around him, like played with a bad offensive line, but was still able to like make some of those NFL throws, on a more consistent basis with like mud around his feet and like it being more chaotic, which in years past I have made that kind of a statement. Like, where did Aaron Rodgers play at? Cal Berkeley. Where did Ben Roethlisberger play at? Miami of Ohio. Where did Matt Ryan play at? Boston College. All these colleges didn't have the best of the best.
Ritter,
So
where did he play?
Cincinnati. So
Yeah.
you had these quarterbacks had to deal with adversity around them game in and game out. And uh yes, Wound, you are 47 minutes late, but you are
How
here.
dare
And
you?
that's all that look, be
Man,
nice to Wound. Anyway,
man. Boom,
so
we're gonna have a talk about this. You're on report, sir.
there it is. But I'm still don't think that I myself haven't seen much from Will Levis that I like uh can really get behind. To me, hands down, like CJ Stroud is still like number one in my opinion. Follow, and it's only because I think he has the size to withstand an NFL career. That worries me with Bryce Young, even
Yeah.
though like Bryce Young has the production, the creativity, the being able to play off script, stuff like that. Um, you finally saw it all from CJ Stroud for an entire game against Georgia. But there are those questions that, like, you go back and watch the Northwestern game with Stroud, the Iowa game with Stroud, and you leave those games going, y'all were clearly the better team, and you struggled for the vast majority of that game.
Yeah.
Like, that's problematic.
And that's just like you were talking about before earlier, is like look at where some of the recent greats played. They were playing in subpar. They did not have the greatest talent around them. That's
Right.
maybe one of the knocks I personally would give to a CJ Stroud, to a Bryce Young, is especially from a Bryce Young perspective. The only time he really had to like things got really muddy for him in the pocket, and 9 times out of 10 was when he played, the big boy teams,
Right.
the Auburns, the Georgias, what have you. The rest of the time in his career, he would drop back, have plenty of time, have the best, some of the best receivers in the country to throw to, going against 2 and 3 star cornerbacks and stuff like that. So like he was able to hold on to that ball and wait and wait and wait and
Wait till
finally
somebody
have
come
a guy
open.
wait till somebody came open. So yeah, you run into those guys, and yeah, CJ Stroud, he had some questionable games this year, but then you turn on the semifinal, the college football playoffs, and he goes up against Georgia and lights Georgia up,
Yeah.
and that all of a sudden you're like,
Oh, dude. Yeah.
that's
I was
what
about to
I
say,
wanted CJ Stroud to be.
I normally don't hang anything on one game, just like we didn't hang, or we were telling people not to hang AJ Terrell on the one game against, um, it was against Alabama.
Jamar
Yeah.
Chase.
Oh yeah, the Jamar, yeah, LSU. That's right, the Jamar Chase game.
Yep.
But watching what Stroud did against that Georgia defense that then turned around and absolutely obliterated TCU,
Mhm.
like that shut me up. Like up to that point, I don't know if it's because they, like Stroud was trying to make a business decision in a sense of I'm not going, I'm going to try to like pass more from the pocket kind of deal. But the dude is an absolute precision passer. And then in that Georgia game, he showed you that when, back against the wall, had to have it, he can make that off script creative play, direct traffic, and carve up the best defense, in college football last year. And so, as an evaluator, you have to ask yourself, which Stroud am I going to get game in and game out? Is it going to
Yeah.
be the Stroud that carved up Georgia? Because if it's going to be the Stroud that carved up Georgia, look, I'm all for giving Ritter a shot. But if you told me that that's the quarterback that I'm going to get game in and game out, I'd take him at 8. And
Yeah.
I would look Ritter in the face and go, bro, what do you want from me?
Yeah.
Like this
But
legitimately could be the next Patrick Mahomes. What do you want from me?
but
But
I just think that overall, like CJ Stroud taking Ohio State to the playoffs, and going up against Georgia and all that stuff is still, in my opinion, this is just perfect. It's just my opinion here, but it's still not as impressive as Ritter taking Cincinnati to the
thank
playoffs.
you. Look, straight up and down, Ritter taking, even though he didn't beat Alabama for pretty much 4 quarters. You know what? Like if any of y'all remember, Alabama had to start running the ball. Like they basically took the ball out of Bryce's hands, not because he was doing bad, because they needed to negate the amount of time that Cincinnati had to work with on offense. Like they turned that into old Alabama football.
Yep.
The fact that Ritter was able to take and open that door for a team like a TCU to get in, to the college football playoff. The fact that he was able to take that team and take them to the college football is like you have to, in a sense, take them seriously, right? Um, no, you're not wrong, Josh. Like they also had Sauce Gardner locking down the other side of the field. You are not
Yeah.
wrong. They had like that defense wasn't no slouch,
Yeah.
but part of they turned it back into a ball control game, to keep Sauce and Ritter from doing what
Wrecking
they
their
were doing.
party.
Right. So I am thoroughly interested to see by the end of the season what we're talking about with Ritter. I
Yeah.
really am.
Because
Like,
he ticks so many, like everything that I read in the lead up to drafting him, everything that I've heard from the coaches, everything I've seen from him in the games, just shows me a guy who works really really hard. He's not a slacker. He's a guy that will make mistakes, but he also doesn't seem like a guy who uh you know lets it get the better of him.
mm-hmm.
When things don't work out, you don't see him just like, oh,
Right. No, yeah, he's not. Yeah, he's
he's
not
not doing
pouting.
he's not
He's
doing that. He goes over to the sideline, he pulls out the Surface tablet, starts going through and looking like, why, okay, what happened there, what could I have done differently. And then
Yep.
you just hear about him like constantly working in the off season. Not to say that any other quarterback's not doing the same thing, but like when you hear about it and you see it, like it makes so much, like if the guy was had just a little bit better of an arm out of college, if he showed what he showed when he was in the preseason, and then especially in the season in the later part of the year, if he had showed that coming out of college,
he'd be
that
a Steeler right now.
yeah, he would have gone. He probably would have gone where Pickett went.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, I just think that like him being able to take Cincinnati, who when he first became the starter for Cincinnati, there was no way in hell, no matter how good they played that year, they were ever going to make the playoffs. but to consistently play as well as he did and win tons and tons of games, they were able to force their way into the conversation to get a berth in the playoffs. And people like right now are going to tell you before any games are played, before any spring games are played, before any practices are done, Ohio State pretty much is a shoe-in. As long as they don't screw it up, they're going to be a shoe-in for the playoffs.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Period. As long as you just don't screw it up, then you're going to be in the playoffs. Cincinnati this coming season, they had their one shot at the playoffs.
Yeah, they're not going to be talked about again.
No, but even if they come out and are undefeated, they're probably still not going to make it.
That's it. Yeah, they're not. Yep, exactly. Hey, Chris, be careful, man. Your bias might be showing there, bro. I see a little bit of Oregon green poking out there, my friend. Might want to put that back in your pocket. All right, let's see here. Next up. All right, now it's time to have a little bit of fun. And chat, I want y'all to throw it out there too. And I want y'all's bold predictions as well. We'll throw up some of the best ones. What you got? You got your hand up.
Nope. Just want to say, what's up, Millie?
What's going on, Mill? Hey, you here? That's all that matters to me. All right. So round one, bold prediction. What is your this one? I don't want nothing to do with the Falcons because we're going to do a Falcons bold prediction here in a minute. So what is your round one bold prediction? What do you think transpires that you don't think anybody else sees coming? It could be 5 quarterbacks taken in the first 10, the first 10, whatever. Like what do you think bold wise as far as the first round goes? And chat, I want y'all to put yours in there too now.
Oh, you want mine?
Yeah. I'm putting you on the spot first. Yeah, I ain't gonna put myself on the spot. Come on now.
God bless it.
You got to get bolder than Texans takes Wilson because that's been going for about a month now. So y'all got to get me bolder than Tyree Wilson to the Texans.
I mean,
ooh, I like this from Chris. No trades in the top 10. Like nobody's trading. Everybody stands pat. That would be, for the way this mock has been shaped up, that would be a pretty big one.
Yeah, that would be a pretty big one.
While you're thinking, I'm going to go through some of these. Josh says Stroud falls out of the top 10. Tennessee would love that.
Yes, they would.
Vrabel's an Ohio State guy. He wouldn't fall past Tennessee, I bet you.
Okay. A bold prediction.
Right.
Honestly, I don't think this is going to happen.
Okay.
But a bold prediction, if you want to go that route, I think something bold would be Jalen Carter doesn't get drafted in the top 20.
Ooh. So you think Carter falls all the way out of the top 20? I agree with you. I don't think that happens, but that would be shocking.
That would be Laramie Tunsil.
Yeah, tight tumble there. ATL says Houston goes for Anderson, Will Anderson. I could see that happening. David says 5 QBs taken in the first 15. I could see that.
I've heard there's another guy who's I haven't really been following the QBs outside of the big four, but there's another guy, Tone.
Oh yeah, Tone out of Houston. University of Houston. Yep.
I've heard his name just out of nowhere, 4 days ago. I saw his name pop up, and there was a list of the top 5 quarterbacks, and it was
he's my favorite non-first round quarterback.
It was Bryce Young, Stroud, Richardson, this kid Tone, and then Levis, and I was like,
right,
who in the hell is this?
Was that a Chris Sims?
Not even heard the name.
Was that Chris Sims list or something?
I don't know if it was Chris. I don't. I just remember looking at it being like, I don't. What?
All right. So Dr. Ganja says Keon White gets drafted in the first, and only 2 wide receivers get drafted in the first. All right. I like that. Okay. MJ says,
I hope you're wrong on Keon White because I would love to have him in the second.
He says Bijan Robinson to the Cardinals at 3.
Oof.
That would be interesting. King says Nolan goes 4, like to the Colts or just top 4. Is that what you're saying? Because that would be rich for Nolan Smith.
Yeah, that would be extremely rich. Because let's just go on the assumption that Carolina and Houston,
Clayton Tune. That's the guy's name.
Clayton Tune. There you go. Carolina Panthers and Texans both take QBs.
Right.
All right. If the Indianapolis Colts take Nolan Smith at 4, okay, that means they at one of these 3 guys were overlooked for Nolan Smith, and that's either Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, or Tyree Wilson.
Yep, that would be
one of those 3 guys is there, and you took Nolan Smith. Now, I like Nolan Smith. I think he's a potential guy that he may put on a little bit of extra pounds once he gets into the NFL weight rooms and all that jazz. And I think he could potentially, I'm not saying he will be, but he comps out pretty favorably to a guy like a Micah Parsons.
right.
So he could be that kind of guy. So, we may look at it from years down the road and be like, man, this guy should have gone like top 5.
Right.
But as of right now, somebody that GM and owner are going to be having some explaining to do.
Sip Thought says Will Anderson not drafted in the top 5.
I've heard that a little bit.
Yeah.
We're starting to hear like Mel Kiper, I think was on a podcast or something like that. He's like, he doesn't have the bend and he doesn't have the explosiveness and this, that, and the other. I don't believe that's the case. But
right.
Mel Kiper, he does it for a living, so we'll see.
No doubt. Let's see.
Trying
to make sure.
I'll say this. James Williams here, his ceiling is Micah. If that's his ceiling, that's a pretty damn good ceiling.
Yeah, no doubt.
If you told me Nolan Smith was going to be like a basically Micah Parsons, version 2, in almost every, so like basically the same guy in almost every way, but maybe a tad bit faster. I would take him at 8. Absolutely. I'd take him at 5 if I knew that for a fact.
Yeah, it's just hard to say. All right, so my bold prediction for the first round in general is I think the Vikings do move up into the top 10 for a quarterback. And that could be all the way up to like 6 at Detroit. I do think the Vikings make a huge move. I could be completely wrong on this, but I think that they aren't 100% sold on Kirk Cousins. They figured they got one more year with Cousins. Like as far as like contract wise, I think they could get out of it after this year.
Now, I could see them doing that. I don't think it would be the Lions. They got 2 first-round picks already.
Right.
And I don't think they would give up their 6. Because you got to think from their perspective, if quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4, which they won't. Unless somebody goes up to 3 and picks a quarterback, because Arizona won't. But if quarterbacks go top 4, if you're at 6, you're guaranteed either Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, or Tyree Wilson. One of those 3 guys.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And any one of those guys that you pair on that defensive line with Aiden Hutchinson and the guys they've already got there. Oof.
The reason why I say 6 is because I think they're going to have to get up in front of the Raiders.
Yeah, I can see them trying to get up to 3.
Right. So James Williams says, do you see Dalvin Cook being included in that package? He very well could be. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's my big prediction or bold take. If both cornerbacks are gone.
Well, it was an ATL thing, so I was like, never mind, we'll hold on to that one.
I got you. All right, so next one up now, Falcons round 1 bold prediction.
So now I'll put it.
Now, if both CBs are gone and both pass rushers, Atlanta will trade back. Okay. My bold prediction, and I'll start off this one. My bold prediction for Atlanta. like Bijan wouldn't be bold just because we've been talking about it forever now. I think that they stay pat and take Paris Johnson Jr. at 8. Somebody that is kind of been talked about. He's already said that he would like to play here and that he'd be willing to play guard. So that makes me feel like they've had that conversation. Now, the only reason why I didn't Blizz, the only reason why I didn't go trade it for Carter, because that's what you're saying, is because that's what we did in our mock draft. Mine, me, and John, and boy, did everybody lambaste us for that one.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Oh yeah.
but so yeah, my bold prediction is definitely, I think it's going to be Paris Johnson at 8. What about yours?
Uh, so I think I think the Falcons. I think the Falcons will drop back to 15.
Okay.
I think that the Jets will move up to 8 to get an O line.
Okay, I can see
Right,
that.
and that leaves us to at 15. I think that's when we feel more comfortable taking Skoronsky.
Okay.
I think we take him there. And I think with the capital that we get off of that, I think we trade back into the late first and get Amir Gibbs.
Okay. What's going on, Aries? Glad you're in here with us tonight.
Aries, how's it going?
Tony Lambert says Paris Johnson at 8 and plug him in at left guard. That's my thoughts. Yeah.
Yep. I can see it.
Definitely. Yep. And then let's see. All right. Let's see what some of these other folks have said. Josh says, hold
Sorry.
on now. Josh says, I think we take Nolan at 8 or trade back in the mid teens for Bijan. Possible. Now, that's the one that you had up, right?
Yeah. CJ Stroud at 8 or trade back for Miles Murphy and trade back into the first for Brian Branch. So you're in kind of in the same boat I am. But see, like, I'll say this. If CJ Stroud falls to 8, we're going to look for the absolute biggest package trade back that we possibly can. And if we can make it happen, that will happen. If CJ Stroud is there and we can't make a trade happen, which I think is unrealistic, but let's say we can't make a trade happen or we're just not, the compensation is not good enough, then I think we will pick a player and not pick CJ Stroud.
Like, right. Josh, does the left guard move the needle more than Bijan? No, it doesn't move like as far as like perception from the fan base. No, but does a left guard then give you more versatility to make a guy like Keaton Mitchell or Kendry Miller look like a Bijan? Yes, because now you have more holes that are open.
We just talked about it earlier. You put in a guy like a Paris Johnson, Skoronsky, you put either one of those guys in at left guard. There's the assumption that they pan out and they are who we think they are.
Right. That's obviously.
But if you make that assumption and those guys get plugged in at left guard and your offensive line is as good as you think it's going to be with those guys, the ripple effects of that makes everything about your offense better.
Yep, makes everything click better, makes it all look better. So yeah, I think like, is it the sexy pick? Not even close. Like, is it the pick that gets everybody hyped and buying jerseys? Not even a little bit. There won't be one Paris Johnson, maybe his mama. His mama might buy an Atlanta Falcon Paris Johnson jersey.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's definitely a move that has effect, you know.
But I will tell you this. If that offensive line pans out like we would expect it to with that kind of a move, is everybody gonna be like hallelujah draft night? Right. No. Is everybody gonna be hallelujah at the beginning of training camp? Midway through the season, you've got the best running game in the league, and you're mashing people, and you've won 6 of 8 games. Damn straight, people are going to be like, "Oh, thank God!" That's what's going to happen.
Sipthal says trade back into the first round for Nolan and draft Witherspoon at 8.
That would be
That
cool.
that's a bold prediction. I'll give you that.
That
That is
is a bold
definitely
prediction.
a bold prediction. Let's see. Anybody else got anything that they want to throw out there? Um, let's see. James says the fans will be a lot happier with an offensive line in the playoffs than an elite running back on the outside looking in. I mean, look, up to this point, as much as like Bijan would be fun, and but look at Ezekiel Elliott, look at Saquon Barkley. You know, if you, I say take Bijan knowing that you're going to get a rookie contract out of him, that's about it. Unless we really do split the carries very well, um, that's just the nature of taking a running back that high. And I would just tell anybody if Bijan's the pick at 8 on Thursday night, I'm just going to tell everybody enjoy the ride. He probably won't be here long, and the Falcons may end up drafting Bo Nix in 24. And I doubt that, Chris. But anyway,
No,
your green's showing again, buddy.
I know. Might want to have
Anyway,
that looked at. If your green is showing for more than 4 hours, please seek medical attention.
please see medical attention. That's right. But yeah, Blizz got it. Draft no line at 8. Get Bijan's backup, Rashawn Johnson, in the 4th, and ground to pound. This, if there is one position that this draft is actually deep on, it is running back.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
it is. Like I know Bijan is the top of the pecking order. Followed closely by Jahmyr Gibbs, but you got quality backs all over this draft, from Tank Bigsby to Zach Evans to uh, David H. I think it's David or David Achane at Texas A&M. I mean, there are Zach Chardonnay. There are backs all over this draft. So, yeah, grab me
Yeah.
a mauler at 8, and like as Jonathan has said plenty of times before, let's just get to mashing people.
Yeah.
And
Okay, so you just brought up what's his face? You just said his name and Dallas running back.
Ezekiel Elliott.
Ezekiel Elliott. Guy comes in, first year rookie, blows people away. Why did he blow people away? Because they drafted an O lineman in the first round, and they had been doing that for the past few years, building up that O line. And so he had his great start to his career because he had an O line, and he had a great O line. All right, and that's the reason why Ezekiel Elliott was able to be the Ezekiel Elliott of his first 2 or 3 years, was because that offensive line. Now they started to get injured on that offensive line. Those guys started to decline. Some of those guys started getting a little bit older, and when that offensive line went, what happened to Zeke Elliott?
Right.
Well, he wasn't the back he was that first couple of years.
That's it.
But so that's the importance of not only you invest in that offensive line and the dividends that you get off the return on that investment is not just keeping your quarterback upright, though that's a big thing. But it's keeps your quarterback upright, gives your offense more time to develop down the field, gives your running back better holes to run through and more clearer holes. So you don't have to have a guy that has this crazy vision, and you don't have to have a Bijan Robinson that makes plays on his own all over the field. That's just a bonus if you do pick him up. All right. But if you have a great offensive line, it opens up so much more for you.
Yep. Now James is singing my tune right here. He says, "Give me the running back out of Pitt or Israel Bandicanda. That is my dude. You give me an O lineman in the first round, and then you give me a Bandicanda in the 4th. Home run threat from anywhere on the field."
Absolutely.
Jay Black says, "Do you guys really think we can score Bijan trading back? Depends on how far. If you stay up in from 15 to 10 or 15 to 11, I think you got a real good shot at it. If you go past 15, it's hard for me to say."
I think if you stay past 15 and he makes it past Philadelphia, I think you got a good shot at getting back and still picking him up.
Right. Yep, I think so. Let's see. King says, fellas, if you compare the first two picks that would fit us the best, who would it be? Fit us the best. I would say Tyree Wilson in the first round and Jameer Gibbs in the second round would be what I would say fits us the best. What do you think?
So I think if we were able to pick up both guys in round 1 and 2, and we're talking 8 and 44, I think the two picks potentially that have the best fit and also gives us the best like impact, because that's another thing they talked about in that presser was they were looking for impact players.
Right. They use that word
The-
a handful of times.
So the two guys that I would love to see us pick in that's kind of a situation, and if I'm just thinking of the team as a whole, either I would say Skoronsky, because I think Paris Johnson will be gone, but I say Skoronsky at 8, and I think it's going to be Adibawore, Addy
Yeah,
in the
Atabore.
second. It's like Ada Tamiwa Adamabore. I think it's
Sure.
the
I'm just
name.
going to call him 80
But
80.
but those two guys, especially 8080, that guy is a beast. If he would drop far enough, I would actually maybe also instead of him, I may do Kalijah Cansey, but I think he's going to be gone.
Yeah, 80 80 would be a lot of fun in the top of the second round and letting
But I think if you get both of those guys, then that allows you to say, okay, now we can go get a Chardonnay maybe later on if he's still available, or a Kendra Miller, or Tajay Spears, or whoever else you want to get. Roshan Johnson. I love Roshan Johnson. I honestly do, because that dude is a really good runner. He can catch the ball, and he has like for a college potential like really good running back in the NFL. Guy has almost zero tread on his tires.
right,
Like he's got less than 100 carries every year he's been in college, and he's not as fast, but that dude he's basically a faster, not fast, but a faster version of Algier, and
right,
that's the guy. Like you make that offensive line right, and you get two just pile drivers back there with Algier and Roshan Johnson, and you just continue to body blow people to death. That would be awesome.
right. He says, hold up, instead of edge, I'm more thin at DB now that Casey and Oliver are gone. No, because you got Jeff Okuda, you got Mike Hughes, you still got D Alford and like Hall, D
Yep,
Hall,
Aaron Hall. Yep,
Darren Hall. I was blanking on his first name. So no, we're not.
D'Angelo Hall.
Yes, that's what was coming to mind, and I was like, "That's not right. That's not correct." But yeah, no, it was. So I don't think we're thin there, and I honestly don't think we're thin at edge. I think a lot of people forget that you spent 2 draft picks last year on edge players.
Yeah.
So,
And
um,
I think a lot of people are going to be backtracking, hopefully. But I think a lot of people are going to be backtracking on Ebiketie
yeah, I think so too. And I think
and maybe Malone,
Malone has.
because
I think
like
yeah, I think Malone has a chance to be like Lorenzo Carter esque. A
yeah,
good 4 or 5 sacks a year, and give you some real good Sam play. All right.
and Ebiketie I think is a guy that could give you like 8 9
Hmm.
this year, and potentially like next year, and you know going forward. I think he's a guy that you're going to expect 8 9 10 11 12 sacks out of every year.
Millie asks, "Can I ask something?" Yes, you can. Why is Bijan such a priority for us as fans when it is proven that we can get a legit running back in later rounds? Y'all know we're going to have to pay Bijan big money if he goes in the first. You're not wrong. And I don't necessarily consider him a priority. I consider him the best player available. Like that for me, and I think for pound for pound. I don't know. He may have turned into what feels like a priority. I think, and I've made this statement kind of on Twitter, it already feels like he's getting too much hype to where it's almost going to be a letdown if we don't draft him. And I think that that's not correct either. I don't think it'll be a letdown if we don't draft him. I don't necessarily think we need him. But if we're talking about BPA, then he's one of the best players in the draft. Like far as pure talent goes,
Yep.
he is top 3 talent wise.
He is one of the few running backs probably in the last few years that you can legit say is absolutely an every down back.
Right. Like, and with the coaching staff that we have, who has shown a propensity to want to have a positionless football team, like he's a guy that can do that. And, he's a guy that can, you can split out and have him run actual routes. Yeah, hit that like button if you feel like it. We'd appreciate it.
Hit the like button, subscribe,
All that
hit
good
that
fun
bell,
stuff.
do
Yep.
all of it.
But he's a guy that you can split out, and he can be, a great slot receiver. He's Le'Veon Bell with more power in a lot of aspects.
Yeah.
So
I mean, could you imagine you have Drake London on one side, Mac Hollins, Scotty Miller, whatever on the other side. You got Kyle Pitts in at tight end in line. And then in the backfield, you got Desmond Ritter, and on either side of him, flanked, is Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson. And Algier can either run the ball, he can be your fullback for Bijan.
Yep.
Bijan can then motion out and become your slot receiver. And like just the thought of all of that is nuts.
Oh yeah, no, it's insane. Like it's insane.
Or hell, put instead of Mac Hollins or Scotty Miller or whatever, put Cordero Patterson on the other side, have him motion in, and then have freaking Bijan motion out. And now everybody's like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Right.
That's what
he says. The boy's good. Don't get me wrong, but what makes him generational? I'll say the biggest thing, because I had the same question. Like I had the same question going in. Like, and I've watched a good bit of his tape. One of the things I'll say is like you watch how the patience that he shows, the start and stop ability, the agility that he has, in the hole to like bend and contort his body. The vision is extremely well. Like those are the things that to me that make him a generational talent. Like he has every aspect. He has the body control to run down like the tightrope the sideline. He has the ability to, contort his body back to make a, back shoulder catch while still toe tapping, and things that you see guys like Julio Jones do, but he's doing it as a running back. So it's the entire package that makes him generational, even though I think we throw around the term generational way too much, way too often. But I think that he is a Saquon-esque, Saquon Barkley at his prime and Ezekiel Elliott at his prime. The question is like, how long does that prime last? And for running backs, they tend not to last as long. So that's what makes it not worth it taking it in the first round.
Unless he's the next Adrian Peterson. I mean, that guy just kept going.
Right.
Now when it ended for him, it ended quick.
Yeah, like he fell off of it quick.
But his cliff was much farther out than the average NFL running back. And I'm not saying Bijan is that guy, but he is like he like you said, he is the total package. Everything that you want a running back to do in today's NFL, he can do it, and he does it well. in all of them. And
Yep.
that's the difference. Like Jahmyr Gibbs, he's a great running back. He's a great pass catcher and all that stuff. He's not the, he doesn't have the size. He's not the, like, Bijan can give you the power of an Algier, but he's also got, like, he can gear up like he's going to try to run you over, and then he dead legs you, and he's past you 10 yards down the field before you even realize what happens. Like,
Right.
he's that kind of guy. And so if there was a guy to take at 8 as a running back, that's the guy. There's no other running back in this class that you're going to take at 8. I mean, could something crazy? Okay, you want a bold prediction? Jahmyr Gibbs goes at 7.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, that's ridiculous. That's insanity, is what that is. That's not a bowl. But yeah, all right. So we're bumping up on an hour and a half. We're losing people left and right. We appreciate y'all.
I got tired of listening to my voice, is what it was.
So we're gonna go ahead and wrap this thing up. We hope that y'all, I know there's gonna be a lot of streams going on the first night. We hope that y'all take time out of your evening to jump in and like chop it up with us and BS with us, because we'll be streaming live for the entire first round, and we will also be streaming for the second and third round as well. So jump in with us, chop it up. We'll be having conversations. Hopefully,
we're sitting on my couch over there, watching this draft, and I'm basically inviting chat to come sit on my couch with me and hang out with me while we all sit and watch the draft on.
That's right. Like, the bots were, if any of y'all follow me on Twitter, I'm going to say this real quick and then we're going to wrap this thing up. If any of y'all follow me on Twitter and y'all saw like people, like accounts retweeting our draft party post saying that there's a contest attached to it, that ain't us. Don't click on that link. That is some kind of weird scam. Okay. So don't, for the love of God, please don't click on that link. Because I'm going to tweet that stuff out again, or, our promotion on, probably tomorrow and again on Thursday. And if you see anybody retweeting it saying that there's like, come join this contest, please don't do it, because that ain't got nothing to do with us. Okay. Yes. So the next thing I don't want to hear is that your credit card got stolen and you come wanting to talk to me about it, because I ain't got nothing to do with it. So, but please join us Thursday night as we have fun and watch the draft live and welcome in whoever the new Falcon is going to be. And then we'll also, like I said, we'll be live again Friday night as well. All right, folks, as always, y'all can catch me on Twitter. I'm at Grimm1128, GRIMMM1128. Jonathan?
At Jonathan M. Holder. Come by, say hi.
Yep. And as always, Falcons fans, rise up.
Rise up.